Hey, glory to Jesus Christ. Glory forever. This is Father Anthony. Here I am. And this is a show where I talk about whatever comes into my fool head. You know, today I haven't got a talk prepared. I don't have a guest lined up. So it really is just a stream of consciousness. Good for you, right? But I do hear that my voice has certain qualities. So even if there is nothing good being communicated, to the extent that the medium is the message, you're okay, right? And, you know, just a little bit on that. In large part, the medium kind of is the message, and here I don't mean in the sense that, you know, it's usually meant like social media has an effect, you know, it encourages narcissism and so on. No, one of the wonderful things is that we don't have to have all the answers. We just need to be together working towards answers. And it isn't that we will never, ever necessarily come to a perfect understanding, a perfect response. But the act of working together towards a goal in love, towards love, that's it. That's the pattern, right? And in order for that to happen, I have to listen to you. I have to get outside of myself. I have to be humble enough to know you. And then together we have to be humble enough to hear each other and to develop towards a common understanding that is always growing, being revealed. You know, it's a process where we grow in mystery. And, you know, so when we talk about things like, you know, the elections or the COVID response and stuff, it's really an opportunity more to do gospel, to do this patterning, the logos, than it is an opportunity to come up with a better policy or something. We're going to get policies right and wrong, but the most important thing as we grow is to be able to do things well in love. And if we make it a regular part of how we respond to the world, how we live in the world, then when difficult things come, like war, like COVIDs, like very challenging elections and events, then, you know, our response is already built in, right? It's habitual. We don't have to develop some kind of a new thing, right? And it's so important that we build those habits into our life, right? Because you don't want to all of a sudden have to develop a new capability every time the world, you know, throws a spanner in the works, right? And let's face it, we've been through a lot, but I say that we've been through a lot in the past year, and you can kind of stack the tragedies one on top of the other. You can say, well, of course we're stressed out. But if we had developed these patterns beforehand, it wouldn't be tragic. Difficult? Yes, difficult. But because we haven't done this beforehand, you know, we kind of have to build the boat when the water is already flooded, right? So let's, you know, the best time to develop a habit, to come up with a habit, is 20 years ago, right? So we already bear the fruits. Second best time is now. So let's develop those habits now. And in order for us to do that well, we kind of need to be centered ourselves, be on that rock, right? The reliable rock. So to remind us of that and who we are and whose we are, let's just do a minute of meditative breathing, the Jesus prayer, right? So breathe in with me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, pause. have mercy on me, a sinner. Breathe out. Pause. Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. Pause. Now breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Last time together today. Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. Pause. Breathe out all that stress. Open up your heart to Christ. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. All right, now we'll resume our normal breathing. So, look, sometimes, I put a title to a show up and I never really get to it. Like, I did a show recently with Father Gregory where, I was thinking we might get to, the difference between, how can you tell if you're being gaslit or if you really are part of bought into a conspiracy theory. And we really never did get to that. It was really more pastoral advice of, hey, look, just chill out, right? Live the gospel. And if you're living the gospel, then you're not going to get gaslit and you're not going to get drawn into conspiracy theories. And if you do, it's not part of your identity, so you can just let it go, right? So, oh my goodness. Hey, Warren, can you bring me my coffee, please? Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I can't do a show without coffee. But you're going to get whatever comes into my full head. And that's my son, Warren. He is our second born. And he is a good man. And I'm not just saying that because he's searching out my coffee. He really is. He's a joy. He's 17. He's a junior in high school. And he's bringing me coffee. All right, thank you, Warren. Cheers. And so today we really are going to get to what I think is the conspiracy theory. We have been drawn into something that goes against our interests, and it goes against the way that we're meant to live. And yeah, I've got strong opinions about elections. I've got strong opinions about how to handle riots, what the tolerance of shenanigans should be, right? And so do you, and that's fine, right? And we can disagree on those. But the most important thing, the thing that the conspiracy that we've bought into, is that the other is my enemy. The other is my enemy. And it's such a colossal lie, and it has become hegemonic. There's this idea of hegemony, right? And you may think of it as being who exerts power, but this is beyond that. So I'm thinking hegemony in the sense of it's an idea that has become just pervasive. It's as natural as the air that we breathe. And we fall into it so quickly now. So look at the elections. Yeah, I'm going to go straight there. I've said it before. Shenanigans. There were shenanigans in the elections. Okay, leading up to it, we knew there were going to be shenanigans, right? We knew. Okay. And y'all, grow up. There are always shenanigans around elections. Right? Always. Okay. We work to minimize it every time. And now there was a debate, right? Well, how are we going to allow people to vote when, it's, for one, it may not be safe. You can disagree about that. It may not be safe for people to go to the polling place. And, it may not be safe to go to the polling place, but we want to maximize people's potential ability to vote if they want to, right? Now, this triggered, it went into natural ways with one side focusing on that second part, let's maximize access to the vote. And then the other side saying, yes, but we have to protect the integrity of the election. And this is a very familiar division, right? And there's a lot, and we're used to a lack of charity being offered across that that different approach, right? So, for example, if you talk about things like, Yeah, should you have to show an ID when you go to vote? I bet you have a strong opinion for or against that. And I bet you, if you have a strong opinion that yes, people should have to offer an ID when they go to vote, it's about the integrity of election. It's about the preservation of order, the preservation of the legitimacy of election, right? And I bet you are used to being told that no, that's not your real motivation. Because the other side has constantly said that is, racist, or, it's prejudicial. It works against the interests of the ones who, are already pushed out of the benefits of American society. Right? You know this, right? So if you say, yeah, I'm absolutely for showing ID, are you used to being called a racist? Right? Why is it? So let's go to the other side. The other side, if you're saying, no, you should never have to show an ID, this is it's our democracy, and if you have to show an ID, then you are discriminating against people who have a hard time getting an ID. Right? And y'all, if you look at who has an ID and who doesn't, what do you think it's correlated with? It's correlated with poverty, especially urban poverty, right? Okay, so it just is. And if you do the math, it's not a lie, right? And I'm saying this because a lot of us are conservatives, right? When we hear this, hey, that's, of course you shouldn't have to show an ID. My instinct, I have to be honest with you, my instinct is, what? IDs? Everybody has an ID. Oh wait, let's look at the data. Maybe that's an assumption that isn't warranted, because all of my conservative friends, if you can show them, no, this really does hurt, these people, they'll say, oh, well, I didn't know that. Let's figure out a compromise, right? But there's so little charity across that. So and you're used to being told, by the way, if you say, no, you shouldn't have to show an ID, what is the critique? Automatically when somebody says that, what comes from the other side? What comes from the other side is, oh, you don't care about the integrity of elections. You're just trying to make sure that, there's people can do fraud, right, for your side. You're just trying to increase the vote for your side. And so no charity, right? And it's not, so we're set up for this. So then when the governments, because this is handled not at the national level, it's handled at the state level, that when they're trying to figure out how are we going to combine these two desires, maximize people's ability to vote if they want to, while keeping a safe, secure election that is seen as legitimate. And both sides are concerned with legitimacy, right? This side is going to focus more on the legitimacy of egalitarianism, of equality, right? This side is going to focus more on just make sure that there's, we minimize fraud, okay? And if we saw it as that, if we saw, hey, these people are evaluating this procedure on a different frame, and then we talked about it in that way, let's figure out a way to maximize both of these things, right? And we're charitable towards the actual intentions of the other side. Okay? And they're bad actors. Yeah, you know what? There are people who say, I don't want those people voting, and let's do everything we can to keep them from voting. And there are people who say, hey, let's figure out a way that we can make the system more vulnerable to our manipulation. Hey, yeah, they're there, okay? Always going to be crazy people. Most of the people, both sides, are genuine, and they are, as sincere and as interested in the prosperity of America and American democracy as we are. Okay? Then the discussion would have been different, right? So when when some states said, okay, what we're going to do is we're just going to really open up mail-in voting, right? Either by, and there are different ways to do that. And when the other side says, wait a second, anytime you stress a system like that, it's gonna create vulnerabilities and decrease the legitimacy of the election, right? That voice would have been heard instead of discredited as being, racist, anti-democratic, anti-egalitarian, and so on, right? And on the other hand, when that voice was raised, this other side would not have said, yeah, you get what I'm saying, right? And so, because we didn't work on it, we weren't used to working on things together, being charitable, and finding a way that would maximize both of those things. And look, if I'm an opinion leader of conservatives, one of the things that is my responsibility is explaining the intentions of the people I'm working with that have a different viewpoint, of explaining that to the people that are my natural group, right? That's just part of the deal, and both sides should be doing that. So as soon as someone said, hey, they're racist, somebody says, no, they're not racist. They're actually genuinely concerned about election legitimacy and election fraud. And as soon as somebody said, hey, they're trying to steal the election, no, they're not trying to steal the election. They're trying to make sure that everyone actually has access to the vote. And a lot of people, even if the risk isn't as great as people think, there are many people who will not vote if X, Y, Z. Okay, so we're not in that pattern of behavior, and so when this came up, we naturally fell into that adversarial rather than the charitable working together. And I've said this before, I honestly believe that God gave us, when he talks about all the different talents that we've been given, some prophets, some teachers, so on. It's also the case that part of that is, some curmudgeons, right? Some incredibly naturally just empathetic and so on. We have those personalities for a reason, right? And it's not, the empathic people are not supposed to just have it against and think that it's a deficiency of character in the curmudgeon, right? Yes, if they live together in a community, they learn from one another. And the curmudgeon should not naturally just think that the person who is empathetic has no spine, right? That's adversarial thinking. Instead, when you look at it as, a corporal reality, that we are part of a body, whether it's a body politic or it's the body with Christ as its head, these things, these differences, no longer become divisions, but opportunities, right? And that's the pattern. That is the way it is supposed to work, but we are so out of that habit. And we're out of that habit because we have not ritualized cooperation. Instead, we self-select, and it's gotten worse over the past year. Why has it gotten worse? Because, like at church, let's just use the example of the parish. At the parish, there's always been some self-selection, right? Especially when you move. You're going to move and you're going to try to find the group that best matches your needs, we would say. But also, we define those needs through our comfort, right? So if you have someone who is, a black and white thinker, they're going to feel more comfortable in a parish that is led by a priest that presents things black and white. Right? If you're more comfortable in gray, right, and you're checking out churches, and you go to that parish, you're gonna be like, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to be spiritually fed here, and so you seek out one that matches. So there's some self-selection, but even in America, we don't move around that much, and church membership is kind of sticky, right? It's sticky. So even when you have a priest that doesn't, you stay, right? And even when priests are like, man, this parish, you stay, right? So that's what I mean by sticky. It's sticky in a social scientist kind of way. Not because the floors haven't been cleaned, right? So, but what's happened over the past year? So you had some of that self-selection going on anyways, right? And then what happens? Wow. You get some things that have made our differences within Orthodoxy more stark and appear more stark than they are, right? So it appears that the ecumenical patriarchate and the Moscow patriarchate can't even fit on the screen. They're so far apart, right? But they're not, right? They are led by serious Orthodox Christians. They are supported by serious Orthodox Christians. So much in common, everything in common, right? Different cultures? Yeah, of course, different cultures, right? The difference between the Greek-speaking and the Northeast European Slavic-speaking cultures, very different, right? Are they as different as the Latin and the Greek in the first millennium? Oh, could be. Anyways, but they have so much in common, but we focus on their differences right now because of, Ukrainian autocephaly and the Council of Crete and so on. That's just the way it is. Okay, I'm not going to tell you which side you should be on. That's the point, right? We're missing something because look how easy it was for us to pick sides on that. Look how easy it was. And not just to pick sides, right? But to think that the people on the other side were our adversaries, right? Not just on this issue, but on everything. We started to see things through that division. So it reified that division rather than seeing things as they really are, which is the fact that I and every Ukrainian Orthodox priest have 99.9% things in common with every single Russian Orthodox priest, both from Rokor and from the Moscow Patriarchate. Well, they're the same thing now, I guess. You see how it was so easy for us. And then over the past year, the internet really the internet is not sticky. It's not sticky. So our parishes are sticky, right? Our friendships are kind of sticky. Our families are very sticky. Oh my goodness, so sticky. Right? No, just kidding. I love my family. But on the internet, it's so easy to self-select into our little, what are called echo chambers, right? Whatever you want to call them, our silos. Yeah, and those silos, it's very easy for us to only think the way that we're used to thinking because other people are thinking the same way. And we're not developing our charitable muscles to understand, to listen to hear. Hear to understand, not to argue. The voice of people who frame things differently than we do. Sorry. Yeah, so, it's just, that's a huge deal. In this, the medium really is part of the message. So, whereas we've been set up for this, so it really is a conspiracy, by the way. It's a conspiracy, and it's not even a secret. It's a conspiracy because so many of the people who have power are working towards the same end. And they don't have meetings. It's not just that they go and they meet, I forget the meetings, what they're called, Bilderbergers or whatever. When they go and they have their little meetings and they're rich people and they talk about ideas and stuff. They bring in experts. It's not just that. It's just that their interests are aligned. Their interests are aligned. And so they naturally do this. And here, look, I'm gonna recommend watching something. It's going to be uncomfortable for every single person, liberal and conservative. libertarian. I don't care who you are. When you watch this, you're going to be like, many of you, if you are liberal, it'll be hard for you to make it through the first 30 minutes because it'll look like it's an apologetic for conservative thinking, right? And then he switches. And all of a sudden, if you're conservative and you're used to certain things, you're going to be like, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. And to delve in instead of, but the meta narrative that he's crafting is, that's the real message. And this, so what are you recommending there, Father? I'm recommending, it's a movie called Hoaxed, Hoaxed, and it's by Cernovich. And Cernovich, he gets labeled, right? But what he is in the body politic is the curmudgeon. He, and there are others who have that role too, the curmudgeon, right? The people who just say things that you don't want to hear. Just cut it out, cut it out, cut it out, cut it out. And the left and the right has these. I don't know what he is, to be honest, you know. But this movie is worth watching, Hoaxed. And so what's the point of it? The point of it is that the media empire is set up to divide us. That is its money-making mechanism, right? That's how it increases. Because what does it thrive on? It thrives on viewership because that allows it to sell more advertising, right? And so what do you get? You get news and entertainment set to divide us. Yeah, do they have other agendas as well? Yes, they do. Although they're not trying to affect things so much as they are just trying to project what they like, right? And because the entertainment industry is, you know, it is liberal, or what some people call progressive, right? What are we progressing towards? I don't know. Anyways, you just naturally get a certain kind of entertainment content. But, okay, you don't have to agree with that. The main point is that the news industry is set up to scare us and to divide us, right? So that's bad enough. And that he did this movie. It was put out in 2019. It's a documentary, so it probably took him a year or two to put it together. It includes like Black Lives Matter, but it was before Black Lives Matter, you know, morphed into all these different directions. Yeah, so I recommend it. But we bought into this. And so we naturally fall into us versus them thinking. Not just that we disagree about issues. We don't even recognize the way that other people are framing issues, that their framing is different. So for example, the election example. Are we framing it maximum participation or maximize legitimacy? Both sides like legitimacy. Safety. We don't recognize that. We just judge them in a way that will demonize them, right? And it's easy to judge people poorly if you use your own framing, right? If they're not framing things the same way, they may very well be maximizing a different virtue than you are. And then you can just say they don't care about virtue, right? Because you know, it looks like they don't care about virtue because you're focused on this one thing, they're focused on another. And actual virtue, capital V virtue, would find a way to maximize both of those things and would actually talk about, hey, yeah, when we maximize this virtue, we are going to take a hit on this one, right? And so compromise is figuring out where those come into play. And it's difficult, right? It's not easy. And some of the things that conservatives value are not valued as much by liberals, and some of the things that liberals really value are not valued as much by conservatives, right? So even that, you know, conversation requires charity, right? But if we were used to this, so let's go back to the election, right? And here, look, don't listen to me because I'm an expert, right? Do the work yourself. Look into when institutions are vulnerable, when procedures are most vulnerable, and how it matters and how we protect it and how the American election system responds to threats and how it has responded to threats to increase a system that is increasingly reliable, right? And as a comparativist, that's one of the things it's not my particular field, but I've read it, right? And, you know, there is concern about election fraud everywhere. You know, so, you know, when we were trying to turn Afghanistan into, you know, a democracy, time well spent. Anyways, you know, we recognize that, hey, this is a huge issue, right? And so you try to come up with ways. You protect ballot boxes. You paint thumbs or something so people don't vote twice. You have vetting. All kinds of stuff need to be done, and it's an iterative process. And you just hope you get it good enough that the results are seen as legitimate, right? That's what you do. And we did create vulnerabilities when we just, so we were used to mail-in ballots. A couple of states, routine. It's routine. And we're used to, what's it called? Not auxiliary. The kind of ballot where you say, hey, I'm not going to be able to, yeah, this is what happens. Not enough coffee. But when a state goes from several 100,000 or, you know, maybe 1 million of this kind of vote, where you're mailing it in, and all of a sudden it has, you know, it's an order of magnitude more, then the old procedures are going to be overwhelmed, right? And that's what we saw. We saw a system responding to that kind of overwhelming change. And yeah, so there are going to be inefficiencies at the very least. Inefficiencies. Is that fraud? Well, yeah. Right? But here's the thing. If we were used to being charitable, if we were used to listening, if we were used to compromising, for one, the election would have been run better. And for another, we wouldn't be as concerned. Here's the other thing. So remember, I'm talking about the overriding conspiracy and how it enables all these other things that are causing us so much stress. Because it's so easy for us to think of the other, the person in the other party or whatever, as just being, we're not used to being charitable, and we're not used to compromising with them. We're not used to listening to them. We're used to thinking of them as the enemy. And our opinion leaders have been telling us over and over again why that side, if they win, they will destroy America. And they give us this, and this reasons. And over the last year, fewer and fewer of us have been listening to, because we have to. We're not stuck at dinner. We're not stuck at a dinner party. We're not stuck at a parish. We're not used to actually listening to people who disagree with us. It's easy for us to just buy into that. Hey, they're trying to destroy America. They're trying to create one side. Yeah, if they win, they're going to create a totalitarian state. Look, they're already creating soft totalitarianism. Here's their agenda. This is what they'll do when they get in. It'll destroy America. Look what it did in communist China, Soviet Union, all these other places. Yeah, yep. Absolutely. Boy, we better win. Oh my goodness, the elections are insecure. And that becomes the frame, is the enemy is trying to destroy America. And the other side as well. Because they've been told over and over again, Trump is this. Trump supporters are this, and they will destroy America. Here, look at what they've already done. Look at what he's already done. Look what he said about these, right? Look at what these people are, deplorable, all this kind of stuff. And it's very easy for them to believe that, because they don't know anybody who drives a pickup truck, right? They don't know anyone who's rural poor, So anyways, We're so used to this, and we are so unused to our muscles of charity, our muscles of compromise, not in the sense of, oh, I'm going to give in, no, of working together to take advantage of different people's strengths to come out with an outcome that moves us further into the mystery. Those muscles are gone. The muscles that we're used to using are demonization, self-justification, right? And online, it's so easy. I don't have to listen to anybody. I can just see what they've put up, and I can say, oh, that person is. I put them in this box, and I either have outrage or empathy. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. So for the last year, that's how we are social beings. We are met, even if you're an introvert. I'm an introvert. People wear me out. I love them, but they wear me out, right? That post-liturgical nap required. Why? Because it's hard to sing for an hour and a half? Yeah, not really. Because being open to that many people for that long is exhausting. Right? But even for introverts, we have that need for connection. And how do we get it? Right? Social media. Social media. The medium is the message. We fall into these patterns. We lose that ability to really listen. How many serious discussions have you had in a line of Facebook responses? No, it's tit for tat. It's tit for tat. It's us versus them. Self-justification, other, demonization, over and over again. It's a natural pattern on social media. Or you get sick of it and you just say, yeah, I want to stay friends with this person, but I don't ever want to see anything they post ever again. Or you do the 30-day, I hope this nonsense is over in 30 days. See you then. Right? Okay, so what do you end up with? You end up with a silo, right? I have a silo of relative peace, of cat pictures, of food pictures, of people posting things about, from the church fathers. That's my silo. Right? No, but I keep enough of the filter down so I can see the outrage that's going on. And then I'm like, yeah, I don't need that anymore. And I turn on my app. It's called Self-Control. And I say, don't let me on Facebook for another 2 days. Right? This is the conspiracy, right? And we're being drawn into it. And my concern is what's going to happen once we are allowed back into face-to-face, right? We're going to self-select, right? Now that we're used to not going to church, how many people just aren't going to go back? And remember, church was one of the places where you had to be around people who think differently than you. Are people going to do that anymore? Are they going to go to a place that challenges them? And just, moving outside this conspiracy theory, are people going to go to a place that challenges them to become better? Or are they going to self-select? Stay home, go to breakfast, sleep in, right? And this is why many pastors are so worried about online services and streaming services, because people can check that box. I'm still a serious Christian because I've checked that box, right? And for Orthodox Christians, we experience Christ together in community, shoulder to shoulder, and sacramentally, living the sacraments together. So live streaming doesn't do that, but more than that, right? So now, all of my parishioners, they're like, I can't go to church, right? I'm too worried about the COVID, and so they're good. So I look around, where are the live streams? Oh wow, oh, is that what good preaching looks like? I like that. And so they're like, yeah, I don't need to go because Father Anthony he puts me to sleep. He talks about this academic stuff. Just not interested. That's what good preaching looks like, right? And I that's how I'm fed. And here's another bonus: I don't have to go to a community that challenges me socially, right? People are going to self-select more. So when I said that church attendance was sticky, like even when you get a priest who's like, oh man, people tend to stick around, right? Because they can wait him out or because there are other things that they like about the community. But now that experience of church has been, that deeper level has been removed. So now we're just this superficial, am I comfortable or not? And that becomes the deciding factor, right? So now when they go back out, how many of them are going to say, yeah, I got to watch the streaming services at this other place, or I like the way that they handled the COVID better, or these other things that have been us versus them-atized, right? And so how many are going to choose a different place, right? And so we'll get an increased siloing even within the church. And Father Gregory, very difficult talk, so I encourage you to listen to it, the one that I did with Father Gregory, where I actually talked about any conspiracies or gaslighting. But towards the end I said, hey, there are a couple ways to do church. One of them is to have self-selection where you have people who think alike all worshiping together, but they're in communion with people who think differently, but are still Orthodox. That's one way of doing it, right? Another way is to have parishes where people are different within, right? Which one's better? And he's like, well, only the second one really is church. That's what's doing church. That's what's better for the community. That's what's better for the individual. That's what it gives us more of an opportunity to pattern the kingdom, right? To live the kingdom. And yeah, I think it's right. I think it's easier. It's much easier to self-select. But you know what? Curmudgeons need to be around people who are more empathetic, people who are more open. And people who are more open need to be around curmudgeons. They really do. And they have to learn to be charitable. And we've got I'm not going to name them, but we've got a couple of people in one of the parishes that I serve. They're like oil and water, And I was worried that they were going to be like oil and fire, right? Because I couldn't disagree more about this, that, and the other. And out in the world, those things line up to where you naturally demonize right? But you know what happened between them? Because they're together in church. Love grew, right? And so they become not just better people on their own by learning to love despite differences, right? One did not convince the other person to change their ideas, right? But they did. What did they do? They patterned. How do people disagree and still love each other? We need that. We need that. And so when you come to this parish, I'm not even going to say which one it is because that would narrow it down because both are small, right? When you go there, you see this, and you're like, I didn't see that coming. It's cool. I love it. And that's our pastor. I'm like, man, I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I'm a part of that. I'm a better person because of them. Thank you. So God bless you if you're listening. Because they would know. They're like, I know exactly what you're talking about. All right, so I did talk about the great conspiracy is to keep us polarized. Don't let it happen. So the answer is, I could say the gospel. The answer is the gospel, love. Well, the answer, by the way, is not to become less virtuous. Don't compromise your virtue. See the virtue in the other. Right? Do you see how that works? Because you don't want them to compromise their virtue, right? Odds are, I could be wrong. Always, by the way, that really is a part of the way I'm wired, right? I said in my amazement, every man is a liar, right? Psalm 115, 116. We say it in my tradition. Every time we're getting ready for communion, we say it. And every time I'm like, yeah, and me first, right? And that honestly changes the way that I go about things. So I could be wrong. But I believe that most people are trying to maximize virtue. Now, there are people who've been so broken down that they've forgotten virtue, right? And they're just trying to survive. and they have all these defenses set up, and so yeah, we got to love them and help them heal, right? And they're going to lash out and stuff. Okay, fine. But most of the people in our lives who are relatively healthy, they're maximizing a virtue. It's incomplete. It's probably an incomplete understanding of virtue. And when Father Gregory was talking about, hey, look, ethics are hard. It's hard to do things well. One of the things he meant was there are all these considerations that come in, virtues that should be maximized, right? And it takes a lot of work to learn how to recognize all the ethical implications of a decision and all the moral dimensions of an issue, right? That's what he's talking about, right? And in our, for one, in our mental laziness and in the fact that we have been bought into this great big conspiracy. We are part of it. We have been manipulated. We don't consider all the dimensions, right? So, for example, the COVID response, what happened if you said, yeah, I understand the risk, and I get the medical part, and I believe you. And many were saying that. They weren't heard as saying that. And then they said, here's another concern, economic collapse, right? The destruction of these businesses. And those won't be felt until later, but they need to be figured into our response. And we were so used to just demonizing people, saying, oh, you don't care about lives. No, that's not patterning the kingdom. Patterning the kingdom is, what does this person bringing to the table, and respecting them. Not just, oh, they're made in the image of God, of course I respect them. No, not that. That's superficial. Do some hard work. This person is hard for me to hear. What is it they're really saying? Oh, well, they're only saying that because of what they've been through in life. Stop. Too easy. What is their witness in this moment? What is their witness? And if we'd have done that, we'd have had policies that took into account different moral dimensions, right? And in the different parts of America, this is why one of the reasons I love America, we have different subcultures, right? And we have federalism. So you'd have different responses, and you'd be able to measure which combination came up with the best way was able to maximize these concerns in a way that maximized well-being, right? And instead, you got just ridiculous stuff being said. Oh, you're worshiping the market. You're worshiping the dollar. No. I'm supporting the market because it is the most efficient way to get people what they need. And when you don't, people don't flourish, people suffer. And so you mess with that. When you mess with that, you're messing with people's lives. Every bit as much as when you don't take the virus seriously, you mess with people's lives. There wasn't that charity given, and it was so sick to watch. Neither side was charitable. So the side that was concerned, like small business owners, they're like, hey, it was easy for them to say, you don't care about my business. Well, yeah, maybe they do care about you, but it's not as much on their radar as protecting against the virus is. Okay, so let's work together. Let's get in the habit of that. Let's develop rituals of listening. Let's develop rituals and patterns of behavior when we spend time together, even with people that we don't agree with, and learn how to understand them. And it doesn't mean you don't ever have to change your opinion. You say, okay, so this is what you're saying. Dump, 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 dump. And they're like, yeah, you just repeated my concerns exactly. And they say, well, okay, I hear you. Doesn't change my opinion one bit because, right? That's fine. And our system through the market and through elections are designed to help us deal with this, right? And going back to the elections, if we were used to doing this, if I didn't automatically see the other as the enemy, if I hadn't bought into this conspiracy that they're trying to destroy America and that they aren't trying to maximize virtues that really aren't on my radar, what I would say, okay, I'm going to push you a little bit. If you believe the election was not stolen, you wouldn't even use the word stolen, right? We would treat it, okay, elections are important, policy is important, right? Yes. Are you a sports fan? Has there ever been a time when a game went one way or the other based on a referee's call? Yeah. How do you deal with it? Do you get upset? Yeah, you get upset. You're like, "Phew." But it doesn't change your life because you recognize, hey, there are going to be other games. And sometimes this happens, right? What I'm more concerned, though, about the sport. And built into the sport is sometimes you get that random, yeah, right? And you can say, yeah, but elections aren't the same. Elections are the same. Yeah, you feel that way because you think the other side's trying to destroy America. Now, the other side is going to do some things that are going to make your life perhaps not quite so enjoyable. Me? Hey, if I'm a single issue voter, assuming that there's a certain level of order and a certain level of freedom, you know what my issue is? The deficit. Is this election going to have an effect on the deficit? Well, marginal, because neither side particularly cares about overspending. But yeah, I mean, hey, free money. Here's the response. Oh, you're in trouble. Here's some money, right? Where's that money coming from? That's my question. Do people need the money? Hey, don't think that I don't care about people. Hey, I get it. And yes, I've read the new economics that deficits don't matter. I don't buy it. I think it's magical thinking. I think it's magical thinking supported by bad math. That's what I think. So yeah, I mean, I get it matters. But hey, so Biden's in now, right? And the Democrats have control of 2 of the 3 branches of government. Courts, you never know. It's so random, right? Okay, so they have control over, they're going to be able to make laws and then execute them according to their desire. All right, fine. They're always going to be constrained by the knowledge that there's another election coming up, right? And by the fact that they don't agree. Okay, fine. My hope is that they will maximize the virtues, right, that are their greatest concerns. Okay? Egalitarianism. Yeah, okay, so I'm not willing to sacrifice a lot for they are. Well, let's see what happens, right? Conservatives, when they come in, man, yeah, it's dangerous. It's dangerous every time conservatives have control of government because I'm against war, right? They're trying to maximize things. Well, let's see, and let's be charitable, right? It'd be more like, it's still not quite like the NFL, right? Or sports, your favorite sports. But it's more like that than it is an epic battle of good versus evil, which is what we're now patterned to respond to it as. The epic battle, the war of good versus evil, and the other side is now on the threshold of victory in that epic battle. And now the next thing we're going to have is we're going to have the gulag, and we're going to have war without end, or we're going to have, the poor get poorer and the rich get richer. It's just the end of the world because evil is won and good is lost. And no, it's not. It really is more like a football game. It's important. It's important. But it's not, it only feels like it's life and death because we bought into this conspiracy theory that has convinced us that the stakes are that high. There are some times when the stakes are that high. And in those cases, all bets are off. Yeah. This isn't that. It's not. It's not. Learn to listen to the other, right? Don't listen to the angry other, the one who's just trying to demonize you. Go deeper, right? Go deeper. What is really at issue here? And what you'll find is that when you go deep, there's a common thing there, right? And what breaks my heart, I'm almost done. What breaks my heart is that this pattern of adversarial thinking has worked its way into the church. It is easy now for someone to call a priest a monster based on false evidence, to say that they should be defrocked based on a lie, right? The real evidence that triggered that bit of discernment is a disagreement over what voices should be heard. And it is easy for people to hear that anger, right? The anger that is fed by this conspiracy of polarization. That there's so much hate, right? That it's easy to demonize someone based on almost nothing. Our minds are pattern recognizing machines, and they will see patterns where they don't exist, even to the extent that they will make up data to fill in the picture that the mind has created. And the anger just magnifies the amount of error that the picture has, right? So based on very little evidence, people will go after priests now and assume that they are, homophobes, is one common way to go against it, or on the other way, that they are part of a conspiracy to undermine the church. When in fact, what they are is serious Orthodox Christians trying to pastor their communities. Be charitable. Learn to hear the other, even when especially when it's uncomfortable. Right? What's going on here? And when I hear the critiques against me and against my priesthood, some of it I'm like, well, that's just factually incorrect. But others I'm like, yeah, you know what? I could have done that differently. And I learn and I become better. So I'm not against critique. I am against lies. And people need to be more careful when they demonize somebody, right? And you know what St. Paul said, right? He describes the pattern in some detail, right? If somebody says something that you find to be objectionable, especially, against the spirit, against the gospel, against the morality of the church, see them in private. See them in private. And what may happen is you may find that you have an ally. You have developed a friendship. If you go straight to adversarial anger and hatred and pointing and shouting and stomping your feet like you're some kind of social justice warrior of the right or of the left, then you have, you're just playing into this conspiracy. You are. And then St. Paul says, if you don't get if you're not satisfied, then bring in another witness, right? And eventually take it before the church, right? But oftentimes, when we take someone aside and say, hey, why did you do that? We find out that we were wrong. And it takes humility, right? J'accuse, to find out that, in my accusation, I actually learned more about my own fallibility, my own sin than I did the other person's. That happens to me all the time. Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't hear you right. I'm an idiot. I said in my amazement, every man, and me first, is a liar, right? Yeah, so let's not fall into this conspiracy theory. In fact, let's work against it. Let's point it out when it's occurring, and let's develop patterns and rituals that work against it and bring sanity back in our conversation, our lives, and our community. And when someone in our life says something or acts in a way that we find contrary to goodness, contrary to the gospel, let's listen. What's going on here? What are they trying to maximize? How can I be good in this moment? How can we go deeper? How can I go deeper into the mystery with this person in this moment? Right? And sometimes it's an opportunity for you to reach in and bring that healing presence to them because they're hurt. And other times it's an opportunity to move into the mystery because we're about to learn something new about the world and a way of thinking about it that is good and useful. But we're going to completely miss it if we have bought into this conspiracy that the other is the enemy. Okay. That's all I have for you today. You know, it's too bad that we didn't get to, I thought we were going to get to talk about pasties. Here's the pasty that Ponitine and I, one of the ones we made last night. It was our attempt to make it, we've been making it out of pastry. That's the traditional way to do a British pasty. And instead I said, hey, you know what? I really like yeast. I like yeast dough more than I like pastry. So we tried to do it on like that. And I'm still not very good at it. So this is a basic dough. I'm very good at one kind of dough. And, you know, based on what I wear, you should be able to guess what kind of dough that is. I mean, I know prosphora dough inside and out. But it's not, you know, doesn't have any butter or anything in it. So ideally, I would learn how, you know what my favorite kind of pasty is? It's the Russian piroshki, right? That you can buy at any perehod anywhere in Moscow, right? So in Moscow, and in many places, I'm sure, but I know Moscow because I lived there for a while, is you can, in busy places, you won't cross the road if you're walking. You'll go under the road, right? And I'm sure there's that in New York City too. And they're always at the entrances and even inside. It's like a mall, right? And you'll have these kiosks where they will sell piroshki. And these are yeast rolls with different fillings. And you can get any kind of filling. I mean, if you can imagine it, somebody's trying to sell it, right? And I just love that. And they were, you know, they were next to free. And you could try all kinds of different ones, you know, if they had, you could get them with, I think the usual is probably, you know, potatoes and cabbage, right? What else? But you can also get meat and potatoes, you can get eggs, whatever, if you can imagine it, you know. But I've never been really good at making them. And now that we've been watching the British baking show, we're learning how to make pasties a little better. And so this was an attempt to make one in a muffin pan, right? And it turned out okay, no soggy bottom. A couple of them leaked, but fantastic. And inside there's this wonderful chicken, you know, it's inspired by, you know, the tacos that we have up at Los Gomez. It turned out really well. So maybe I'll do another show on that. Well, y'all, appreciate your time. I hope that you will work with me in countering this conspiracy, because it's the enabler for the other conspiracies, right? Because it clouds our vision. It doesn't allow us to see. And so we assume if the other is my enemy, then that enemy is always trying to gaslight me, right? Always trying to manipulate me, right? Well, maybe. But maybe the main manipulation is that you have an enemy at all, other than, you know, the elite who are actually running things and generating this conspiracy. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that on a different show. Well, until next time, Godspeed.